Policy Analyst consultant, and now accomplished author. Sister Kaleema Overton Ameen will be the guest on my upcoming episode of Real Reading Talk. Stay tuned. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Real Reading Talk. I am your most gracious host, Miss Seisha. And with the Real Reading Talk, we discuss the real systemic issues that are at the very core, the very foundation, as to why there are low levels of literacy in the Black community and the ways in which we can combat these issues together. All right, everybody, welcome, welcome. And so, once again, y'all just don't understand how blessed I feel right now, okay? Because just like I had said previously, I wanted to, as much as possible, seek out as many Black authors so that you all can hear from those in our communities who have taken the time to write books, all right? And this is something that we need to have more of, and we need to celebrate our Black authors. So with that being said, today, I have a phenomenal guest, all right? So she is a federal policy analyst and she is a consultant in that field, all right? She was retired as an employee, but now, honey, she got her own thing going on, okay? She's working for herself as a consultant in that field, all right? And she is also the author of this phenomenal, amazing book that, yes, I have read. Yes, I go back and study, highlight, underline, all of that. She is the author of this book entitled Hidden in Plain Sight. I have the copy. She has the background, which I absolutely love. All right. And Are You Being Groomed for Love Bombing, Spirit Breaking, and Abandonment? Her name is Kaleema Overton Ameen. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for the invite.
Yes, wa alaikum salam. Oh my goodness. And I'm just gonna tell y'all this full disclosure, okay? I have been trying to get her on the show, all right, but the sister, she is doing her thing, okay? She had other, shows and other things she had to do, so she had to fit me in her schedule. No, I'm just
I think you kind of, yeah, I had to get on your schedule, and thank
right,
you for the
right.
intro. I was looking behind me thinking, who is she talking about?
Oh, no.
That was an amazing intro.
Well, that's good because you are an amazing sister. And even though we have
Thank
not
you.
met, you are welcome. We have not met personally. Of course, we met in the internet streets, you know what I mean? Connected, Facebook and all of that, but you are just, positive, a breath of fresh air. Again, like I said, just taking the time to write a book that takes work. And then the type of book that you have written, you talk about research, exhaustive, all of that. But before we get into the book, I always love to start with our guests with their family background and you giving us a little bit more about who Kaleema is. Take it away.
Okay. Well, I was born and raised in North Carolina in a small town, Elizabeth City. And I have four siblings and parents and step parents and step grandparents and extended family that lived. We all lived within about a 6 to 8 block radius. So we had free reign, and, our grandparents and great aunts and uncles, even some teachers lived on our street. And so, it was, in hindsight, when I look at now, it was definitely very nice upbringing, but we were struggling financially like most, Black families during that time, in the late 60s and 70s. But we had a wealth of family around us, and we spent a lot of time sitting on our grandmother's porches and our great aunts' porches, and people calling us in to eat. Wherever you are, that's where you're going to eat. And sometimes, spending the night for weeks on end, in the summer, at grandma's house and things like that. So that's how I grew up. I was always writing from the time I was 12, writing poetry and short stories, and you know, um, I had, hopes of writing a book of poetry or something of that nature. I did go to HBCU, Elizabeth City State University, and majored in English Lit. And I didn't know exactly what I was going to do. My dad was like, okay, so now you're going to do that. How are you going to make money? So, but as Allah would have it, I went on, eventually down this path of writing grants and contracts, and then someone introduced me to policy and said, "You would be great for this." It's a combination of writing and law and procedures, and so I ended up having a really good 23-year career, in the federal government. So that's kind of like in a snapshot.
Wow.
Yes.
That is so dope. What I wanted you to do real quick, as you did say, what policy, can you tell us? So, again, give us a real layman's terms, if you will, what a policy analyst is. And especially, too, because I have
Mhm.
an audience who I always encourage the families to listen, right? So, you're talking about young people listening, because I want them to hear about these different professions. That's not
Mhm.
a profession that you usually hear, about.
Right, and I knew nothing about it myself, right? But it is a great career for someone who loves to read, who loves to write, and, initially I thought I was going to teach English lit. I loved, like Shakespeare and Beowulf and all these things nobody else likes, right? So, but it's a policy analyst is someone who looks at the policies and procedures, whether they're local, state, or federal, any type of programs. For instance, let's say if you have a reading program for children, if you want to look at that program and see where the holes and gaps are in the services between the service provider and the recipient of the services. So it's the same process, whether it's a reading program. I worked with uh, pediatric mental health, organ transplant programs. I've worked with bioterrorism programs, disaster relief. But the process is the same. You want to take the program, look at it, look at the holes and gaps, evaluate what's missing that's preventing the program from being successful, how it can be improved, how the service delivery can be improved. For instance, with one of our programs, we found out that, oftentimes people don't have access to information because their inability to read beyond a ninth grade level. Well, unfortunately, in the United States, most people are reading between sixth and ninth grade level. And so we determined that we need to make sure, and even across the federal government, they determined we need to make sure that all of these, the access to information for healthcare and housing, everything needs to be written no higher than a ninth grade level. So we would take another thing a policy analyst would do would take complex policies and procedures that come out of Congress and out of the White House. We're constantly staying on top of the new things that are coming out. And sometimes, you have to rewrite them, right, at a ninth grade level because that increases access to information. Some people don't have access to information, not because it's not there, but because they can't understand, the technical jargon and lingo. So we want to remove all of that, right? And so pretty much that is some of the things that a policy analyst would do. Right now, I am doing compliance review for research grants. And so what we do is for different federal agencies, we go to the research institutions or colleges and universities and nonprofit and for-profit research institutions. We evaluate their grants that they have with the federal government for research compliance, and then we do the same thing. These are the holes, these are the gaps you have where you may not be following federal policy, and we help them get their policies in place so when the auditors come, they're ready with
Mm.
their policies and procedures and that financial management and how they manage these research awards, because they're not thinking about that. They're doing actual research, whether it's medical research, scientific research, technological research, and they need to focus on that. So someone else needs to focus on keeping them compliant and making sure they're not falling through these gaps or tripping themselves up, with not following certain procedures.
Wow, that first of all, I appreciate you for doing something like
Mhm.
that's very thorough and breaking it down for our community. And the thing that you said to me, or said to our audience, that most people are reading between the sixth and ninth grade level. And that is something I remember learning about even when they write newspapers, how they say they
Mhm.
don't usually write it over, like it's usually, like I heard eighth grade. So, it makes the
Mhm.
same thing, you know what I'm saying? And I, the thing is that I want to, how do you feel about the fact that they write these things in such a complex way? Because I think about how we've, in the Black community, we've heard the saying, make it plain, right?
Mhm.
Make it plain, brother, our dear brother Malcolm X, Rahim Allah, would say that. And that's something that we know in the community. do you think that is necessary for them, when they are writing these things? And that's something that you've ever talked about in terms of why is everything written in such this complex way? It's almost like they're doing it so that they can keep people out who, would need these certain programs.
Well, I don't believe that's the case. I believe they do need to be written in the way that they're written.
Okay.
Because even for me, on my job, is certain terminology and lingo and some complex ideas that for me as a policy analyst, it imparts to me what I need to do. But
Hmm.
some of the things I need to do, they can't tell me to do these things, on a ninth grade level,
Hmm.
right? When you're
Hmm.
thinking about dealing with things like organ transplant programs.
Hmm.
Well, the people who are writing organ transplant programs, I used to work with that program and in pediatric mental health, right? They are in their area of expertise and they're using the jargon and the lingo and the technical information that helps them do their job. They're doing what they're supposed to do.
Hmm.
Now, here comes the policy analyst. My job is to take that information
Hmm.
and get it down to, not down, but put it in a ninth grade level to give access because everyone has a lane to be in,
Okay.
right? And they are in their lane because they can't, when you think about, I used to work at the Department of Commerce and they um they manage everything from the production of peanut butter to medical equipment, airplanes, everything goes through the Department of Commerce.
Hmm.
Well, if you're manufacturing or creating medical equipment, you can't describe that and say, okay, we need to describe this on a ninth grade level because the people that need the information, they're beyond the ninth grade level. They're researchers, they're doctors,
Hmm.
right? And they
Hmm.
have to write it for them. And then, like I said, we come along and then we're going to break it down
Got you.
wherever it needs to be broken down, right? So everyone has a job and a lane, and so I wouldn't say that they're doing that to prevent access.
Hmm.
Um, but the problem comes on the other end where, we haven't raised the reading level. I know my grandparents were born in 1906 in 1905. And I remember my grandfather read on the third grade level. My grandmother read on the sixth grade level. And she was born in 1906, reading on the sixth grade level. And here we are in 2024, and people are still reading on the sixth through ninth grade level. We haven't made any progress. That is not because the information is too complex. That is because the school system, they're underpaying teachers. They want qualified teachers. And, they have champagne taste with beer money. You want to get the best teacher, but you want to pay them the lowest salary. Well, people are not going, they have to earn a living wage. And so even just like for myself, I majored in English lit. I wanted to teach, but I'm like, well, and I wanted to write. And my dad's like, well, how are you going to make money? How are you going to support yourself, as a single person? Right? And so then you find, I think I'm going off, but in that tangent, but in a different direction. But then you find like people who want to teach who are head of households, they can't afford to teach, right? They can't, a man who has a wife and four kids can't make a living wage teaching, no matter how much he loves teaching. So now he has to make a choice. Am I going to support my wife and four kids? Or am I going to follow my love and teach?
Hmm.
You know, and so it's a problem in this country. Some countries don't have that problem because, they practice a different system. It's not capitalism. And your job and your profession, whatever you love, if you love to be a baker, you can be a baker and earn a living wage for your family. But this is a capitalistic society. And we don't put value in teaching. We put value in sports and entertainment and all this kind of stuff, which actually we can kind of take or leave sometimes. But teaching, we can never take or leave.
Hmm.
And so I think that's the big gap we haven't closed from 1906 to 2024 when people are still reading on the third through ninth grade level, this huge gap we haven't closed. And I don't think, it's just a haves and a have not when it comes to education and when it comes to finances. And in a capitalistic society, I don't think they have any intention of closing that gap.
And see, therein lies the issue right there. And that's the reason why, with Real Reading Talk, I talk about the real issues. And I have guests on here. We're talking about these real issues because of the fact, by this being a capitalistic society, all they care about is gaining as much capital, meaning when I say they, I always talk about the system and the foundation of this system, which is the false notion of white supremacy. Because when we
Mhm.
see those people who are in those positions, who are making decisions, who are, creating the laws and everything, they don't look like us. They can care less, about our communities. And so, with that being said, when you have issues just like you raised in terms of the teachers aren't getting paid, however, they'll make sure that they'll give a lot of money, especially when they're marketing to Black people, the entertainment, the athletics. So you can make your money in those fields and you don't have to worry about like what you're doing, really doing a whole bunch of research, a lot of reading, a lot of different things. Like it's like they look at it like, well, you know what? We'll give you money, we'll pay you for not having to do all of this reading, all of this research. You just make sure you entertain us. So
Right.
there's an issue right there. And for those other jobs where you do have to do a lot of reading, a lot of research, a lot of writing, that's it's looked at as like, man, please, do I want to go that route and kind of bust my brain and do all of this stuff that's kind of boring to me? It's not something that relates to me, but I can go over here and I can make a song or I can dribble a basketball, throw a football, whatever the case, and I can still be rich because I think
That's
that's
the
the
individual choice. We have to close the gap for ourselves. And I think that I know oftentimes people, think, okay, it's a black white issue, um, or majority minority issue, but I think it's a rich poor issue. It's just that people who are in the majority when it comes to race and they're poor, they don't even know they're in the same boat with everybody else because they're constantly being fed, you know, you're better just by being white. But poor white people are suffering and in the same boat as everybody else. So now it becomes an economic issue, right? And so I think that everyone, we have to set our own path and decide, like some other cultures, we push our children in certain areas to say this is where you're going to have a living wage and have a great living, and they push towards the sciences and the maths and things like that, where we're sometimes not doing that because we want to, sometimes, like you said, well, they're going to give you this for entertainment, and we have to shift, you know we have to make shifts in the process
Mhm.
because we can't, even if they are doing that, we know the game, right? So we know the rules. So now we have to play to win.
Mhm.
We have to position our children to play to win, like what you're doing. Because even if you decide to be in entertainment or sports, if you can't read a contract and you sign your name, that's how they end up getting a multi-million-dollar contract and end up broke. You have someone else reading your contract for you. They're going to set you up with the contract. Then they're going to dwindle away all your money. They're going to set you up with the real estate agent, the car dealership, the broker to buy your home, and all these finance and all this stuff is going to be bleeding out into some other community because you can't read your contract.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And see,
So even basic stuff like that we're doing every day, like everyone should learn. We have what you're doing is so important because if you can't read, my grandfather used to sign his name with an X, but he
mhm,
sent all his kids to college,
right.
right? Who wanted to go. And
Mhm.
so, but if you can't read, then
And I
then what?
and the thing is that, and you're absolutely right because and from my perspective, and I would definitely say this is because when you think about capitalism, as we know, we were the capital, Black
Mhm,
folks. So that's where the whole foundation of capitalism comes from. The human capital that was used to build the foundation of this country. And of course, out of that, when they decided that we were the other, we were going to be the ones who were going to be subjected to oppression and all of these horrific things, being
mhm,
of kidnapped Africans. That whole ideology is, okay, we have to have this underclass, this permanent underclass. And I know Dr. Claude Anderson, he talks about that extensively in the book Powernomics and different things of that nature. And I think, and I understand what you're saying in terms of, yes, we know economically, Obviously, it's just, the haves and the have nots. But again, they have to create, which they did create successfully. Now it's on us to be able to get ourselves out. Because I always talk about
Mhm.
that in terms of we didn't cause the problem. However, we are the ones who have to fix it. We are the ones who have to have that mindset. And that's why I'm definitely a proponent of us making sure that we bring reading back in our communities. We bring that idea of us supporting one another heavily, making sure that we educate ourselves on our people, making sure that we know who we are, love who we are, because I truly believe that's the foundation. It's just like what you said with your grandparents, how they made sure that their kids went to college and they weren't reading on this, high level. But that just goes to show you the mindset of commitment, community, persistence, saying, "Hey, look, okay, I may not have these things, but you're going to have it." And I
Mhm.
think, and I want you to speak to how you were raised in terms of in your family with the culture of literacy that was developed in your family, because to me, that's a very important aspect of what we're missing in our communities. It's like we don't have that connection a lot with our grandparents, great grandparents in the community, so we can have that mindset. So we don't think in the sense of me, mine, I'm gonna get mine, because that's the capitalistic mindset, really, for real, for real. It's
Mhm.
all about survival of the fittest. Can you hang? Can if you can hang, yeah, you got this. But what about the folks who they may don't have it? So we supposed to just lead them to the side and just say forget them, or you better get this? It's like, no, some people may not have this, but just like how you said with your grandparents, they had that idea of family and commitment and community. So to me, they had something that was far greater than the aspect of maybe they didn't have the material resources. So can you speak to just even like I said, that foundation that you
Mhm. Yeah, because on my father's side, those are the grandparents that I was speaking of, and then on my mother's side, my grandmother was a teacher, but, she went to school at a time when they had the state normal schools for Black students, and they didn't have a four-year teaching degree, where she ended up going back to school late in her career in her 60s and got her bachelor's degree and graduated with her youngest child, right? And so, but even so, on both sides with my grandparents, education was of value, right? And with my parents, and it was always known to me, even as a small child, when I get out of high school, you're going to college. I didn't even know to think to do something else, because it was always said you're going to go. And that's how I talk to my son. When you go to college, when you purchase your car, when you buy your home, this is, it's not if, it's when these things happen, you're going to line these things up, right? And so that was a mindset. I never thought that it was an option not to go to college, right? And so, and that's, that was the idea, because my grandmother was a teacher. I had, I don't know, I can count 4 or 5 aunts who were teachers. My great aunts were teachers, and they would tell us about how, they would ride together, and they would ride to, it's like a 2-hour drive to where they were teaching in these small towns, you know. And so that's what I grew up hearing about, you know. And so on both sides, the family that didn't have a formal education, the family that did, everyone, regardless, is talking about education.
had.
Right? And so oftentimes, but when you're growing up in a situation where everyone is struggling economically, sometimes it's not always at the forefront, but it was already put in us that this is what we're going to do. We're going to graduate from high school. We're going to go to college.
Okay.
Yes.
So, and I want to stay there with the mindset because that's key. And
Hmm.
that's what I talk about a lot, the mindset. We have to make sure that we are changing our mindset and we are understanding that, number one, whatever it is that we're doing, we have to make sure that we have the fortitude. We have to make sure that we surround ourselves with the positive attitudes, the spirits, the language, the communication of people who are supporting positivity in our families, within our communities, and at the the world at large. And I would like for you to just give some examples of how we can help to change that mindset. I mean, you talked about it already in terms of the conversations, but just speaking to those people who are listening, because a lot of times the people who do listen to this podcast, you know, they are in survival mode.
Mhm.
They are literally, they're scratching and surviving. Good times, for real, for real. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? You got, single mothers, African American mothers who are, they got 2 jobs, 3 jobs, and they're trying to sit up here and make sure the kids get to school, and they're trying to make sure that they are getting their work done, all of that. And then you'll hear people talk about these studies where okay, you have to spend family time, you have to make sure you're sitting around the dinner table. Okay, you have to have
Mhm.
these conversations. They're saying all of the research is coming out saying all these things you got to do. However, you're talking to folks who aren't able to do it because they're in a rat race. You're talking
Right.
to folks who are economically, struggling, so they're not in what you're talking about with the mindset. You're talking about thriving mode. So we got to change our people's mindsets from survival to thriving mode. So
Mhm.
asking you that, how do we? What would you suggest?
Yes. And we definitely, I hope I'm not painting a wrong picture. Even in my family growing up, we were always in survival mode. Now, the kids, sometimes we knew it and sometimes we didn't, right? But we were always in survival mode, but it was that hope and that dream and that idea. I don't even want to say dream because, it was that idea that, this background of education and college and things like that. And so, and you have to have a plan A, B, C, and D.
Oh,
Even for my son, he struggled a lot in the last 2 years in school. And I said, okay, we're going to have multiple plans. Of course, you always have to have multiple plans. So I started to explore with him options in case college wasn't for him. And so we started looking at, because he wanted to do engineering. I found some programs that provided engineering apprentice programs. And so you're in a work study programs for engineering, right? With places like the Merchant Marines, and we live in an area where they have naval shipyards, and then the Navy comes to his school and says, "Oh, we have an engineering program." So now we start exploring those. But once he got back on track and his grades went up, then he started focusing on college again. But like I said, you always have to have a plan B, right? Because it's still education. You're just taking a different route. And so I think in response to your question, you know, we're always constantly in survival mode. Just as African Americans, as Muslims, as women, we got three things that keeps us in survival mode. And add being a single parent, if you are. If you're not, it's still hard. And so we always have to have a plan A, a plan B, a plan C, maybe a plan D, but we need to make sure all these plans lead to our children being able to be independent, being able, we haven't done our job as parents if our children can't take care of themselves. And so we should be doing that all along the way when it comes to, to reading, or, and everyone is not going to be good at everything, right? And like my son, his strong suit is math and science. Reading is his weak suit, right? And so I tell him I expect this in these classes, and I have a different expectation for these classes, because you know what I'm saying? And so his engineering class, he keeps a 99%.
mm,
Now that English class is a struggle and a beast for him, because that's not how his brain works,
no.
right? In my brain, I can't count past my fingers and toes. I can write like nobody's business, but don't ask me to add up anything. Once I run out of fingers and toes, it's a wrap, right? So we have to help our children figure out where their strong suit is, and we lean into that.
Mm,
Lean into 100%, because now they're going to be able to take care of themselves.
mm,
And everybody doesn't have to be an engineer, a policy analyst, a teacher, because there's jobs out there that can still bring you dignity and respect and care for your family. And so that's what we need to really focus on, and building wealth. And so even if you even if you're working as a cashier someplace, there's an opportunity for home ownership. And this is how we can build generational wealth. And even if you can't do that, need to have a life insurance policy. So when we do go, our children we can change the trajectory of the next generation. We can put them in a whole new income bracket with a $500,000 life insurance policy. So we need to teach these things that our parents had no time to teach us. Now, in my family, everyone's talking about education, but then there was a gap, because guess what? No one was telling us all the little steps to get there. It's like, this is where you're going, but then we had to figure out how to get there on our own. Why? Because they were busy in survival mode.
mm.
Give us the idea, give us the dream. We have that, but now you're going to have to get the rest kind of on your own.
Okay.
And so case in point for myself, as a child, I wanted to write, but I also wanted to be an attorney. Well, my parents were like, "Well, you're gonna go to this school," and this is a school where they had, uh, lots of teachers. Now, where they cranked out teachers like nobody's business. So, but that was the mindset because that was their generation, and that law school was gonna be too hard and too expensive,
Ah,
right? And so now
mm,
my my idea of doing that has kind of diminished, right?
yeah.
Because it's put in my mind that, yeah, you need to go to college, but law school is too hard and too expensive. And so fast forward, when I was taking care of my dad, there was a nurse's aide that used to come to the home to help us. And she wanted to go to medical school. And she said her parents, who were both in the military, right? Mom is a nurse. Dad, I don't know what he did in the military, said the same thing. Medical school is going to be too hard and too expensive. So you should go to nursing school. So she's telling me about it. She was great. I loved her I said, you need to be a doctor if that's what you want to do. And I said, you don't, I said, no disrespect. And I didn't mean any disrespect. You need to talk to people who have done it because our parents have fears for us that it is fear of a parent, right? And they don't want us to take risk,
Mm,
right? So
mm.
I said, I have a friend who has her own medical practice. You need to talk to her. I give her the number. She talks to her. She said, "Oh yeah." She said, had I known better, she had her own medical practice at 27, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
Come on.
But she told her, had I was I if I had to do it all again, because now she leaves medical school with $200,000 in debt. She said, I would have gone into the military and let them pay for my med school. Then she said, and if not that, I would have done this, I would have done that. Said, so you can leave med school without this $200,000 debt,
Mm.
right? And so, and that's my whole point is now for us, I don't know anything about engineering, but my brother's an engineer at NASA. I meet brothers in the community who are engineers. So now I have to put my son in line with them. He doesn't need to take advice from me about engineering because I can't count. Right? Now, if he wanted to do something else, if you want to be a policy analyst, I'm your person.
Oh,
But everybody in your family, we need to drain those resources in our families. Everyone has a powerful role in their family, you know, and we need to go to those people and let them point us in that direction, you know. And so when we're thinking about building generational wealth, moving our children up beyond where we are, I've been a homeowner multiple times over, but I could have done it sooner. So I'm always telling my son, you need to buy some property. And my sister tell her kids, you need to buy property, whether you're using it or not, right? And this is how you can do it,
mm, mm.
right? And so, or if you can't do that, a life insurance policy is a big chunk of money that costs very little month to month. But of course, some people are struggling and they can't afford it. But we have to think about all these ways. If A is not going to work, and then B, and then C, we have to have a strategy and a plan.
Mhm.
And it's hard to do when you're kind of flying by the seat of your pantyhose. You're a single mom, you're working, you got kids, they got to get to school, or you're two parents in the home and everyone is struggling. It's kind of hard, but it's hard to plan when you're in survival mode. And we have to be able to reach outside to say, hey, I need someone to look at what I'm doing so I can figure out how to stay afloat and make some traction in life.
Mm.
And even at every age, even for myself, you know, I'm I've been doing, kind of good, I would say. However, I still have to reach out to people for financial advice, for career advice, for personal advice, obviously, and so for parenting advice, I have a sister, I have two sisters who are great parents, but I have one sister who's very strong religiously, one who's very, strong with parents, one who's an educator. I have a brother, who's, like I said, an engineer. So I don't beat my head against the wall.
Got you. Mm.
Call Uncle so and so, call Aunt so and so. Let's figure this out. And we
Mhm.
have to be able to ask for help. We can't, the village, we have to use the village.
And you gave us like literally just a whole like pamphlet of, I mean, for real. I mean, and these are like practical things that you gave in terms of ways in which we need to change the mindset and have the community involved, making sure that we have that connection with our families. Because I'm going to tell you, I think, no, I know that that's a big part of what has happened and what has happened in the Black
Mhm.
community in particular. Because even, even when myself growing up, I remember at least having those times where we would go over to our great grandparents' house, for dinner, and what I'm saying, have the Sunday dinners and have those types of things. It's like, but as we saw, especially, I would definitely say during the late '80s, when we start having the drug,
Mhm.
infestation in our communities,
Mhm.
that was the beginning of the end in
Mhm.
terms of our communities. Okay. And so that whole village that you're talking about, that is something now, again, what we're trying to do, we're trying to remember what has been dismembered, what has been disconnected.
Mhm.
And I believe that I'm definitely a realist, optimistic realist person. Okay. So I look at the things that is going on and I'm like, okay, there are changes that definitely have been made. However, we have a long way to go. And it starts with having that foundation, that family foundation. And that's why
Mhm.
I always talk about, even with us, something as simple as making sure that we have read alouds in our families, doing something where you're reading to your children, something where you're creating that connection, that community, that communication. And I love how the fact you drove home, of you are reaching out to people who are, about things that you don't necessarily know about. You make it clear, who you are. And I believe that when people hear this, and when they hear this episode, because I feel like this in listening to you, you're sure of who you are. And you have folks who, they don't know who they are. They're trying to figure it out because of survival, because of trauma, because of the things, which is going to lead me into, the book, that trauma ain't no joke. When people have been
Mhm.
dealing with issues of, abuse, they've been dealing with issues economically where they just always saw a lot of strife, always saw struggling. Maybe they moved around a lot. You have a lot of, our kids, they moved around a lot, went to different schools and different, you don't have that stability, that foundation, it's
Mhm.
hard to be able to even see yourself in the next 5 years, next 10 years. And you talking about having a plan. People are like, man, I'm trying to plan, for what we're going to have for dinner.
Dinner tonight.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I
How
want,
I'm gonna pay for it. Mhm.
I'm going to pay for it. How are we going to pay this light bill? And these are real things. But the hope that you gave us in your examples of ways in which we can change that mindset was just beautiful. Like I wrote down, you said have plan A, B, C, D, E, right?
Mhm.
Talking to people who have a strong suit in certain aspects. So just like you said with your son, he wants to be an engineer. So now you've connected him to engineers. And then you talked about in terms of the access, having that access to people who have different information on different things that your child, they're interested in. And you talked about the strong suit of what your child has. Just like you said, you saw that he was something, he gravitated to engineering. If you see your child gravitating to baking or whatever, and what I would add in there,
Let's
that
open a bakery.
and the
Yeah.
component that I would add to that, and this is what I tell people in terms of getting their kids into reading, all you have to do is find out what it is that your child likes.
Mhm.
Start off with that. We I think what we try to do is we are literally trying to turn something that's so simple and we're trying to make it complex. We're not
Mhm.
making it plain. We're not literally starting with the foundation and saying, hey, look, your child, they love fashion designing. I have a son who's a phenomenal artist. Matter of fact, I got a son and a daughter, okay, who are phenomenal artists. And I'm always putting in their ear, okay, you can graphic design, you can
Mhm.
design clothes, all right, you know what I'm saying, all of these different things. So now what I want to do is, like I talked about in terms of the trauma, in terms of the different things that a lot of our communities, a lot of people in our community deal with. Let's talk about your book, Hidden in Plain Sight. And I want to reference something from your book because I want you to go into what made you start writing the book and everything. I wanted to read something that I found on page 56 from your book, and how you talked about, this is dealing with the children. Okay. And it says that Brad Bushman's study in the National Academy of Sciences was the first to look at the origins of narcissism. His studies show that people are not born narcissists, but that it is the way parents treat their children that leads them to narcissism. And then I'm going to end with on the paragraph where it says parental warmth was not associated with narcissism. So, first, what I want you to do is number one, tell everybody about your book. And of course, like you always do, you're going to define narcissism. I know I didn't. I just want to say that. Can you please go into your book?
Yes, I did not have the intent to write this book, but as Allah would have it, life's unfortunate events led me to something great. I'm not saying my book is great. I'm saying a great path. I finally, I was able to use this book to, as a process of my healing, right? And my book, Hidden in Plain Sight, Are You Being Groomed for Love Bombing, Spirit Breaking, and Abandonment, is really talking about hidden abuse in our communities. Because people look at you and say, you don't have a broken eye, a busted lip, broken bones, you're okay. And so the abuse that's hidden is psychological abuse, emotional abuse, financial abuse, and spiritual abuse. You don't wear that, right? Sometimes, but not likely. And the abuser that hides in communities. So the hidden in plain sight is talking about the abuse that's hidden and the abuser that hides. They hide in religious communities, whether you're Muslim or Christian or Catholic or Jewish or whatever. It's a great stomping ground for abusers, because once they try to align with you religiously, your guard comes down, because they will make you think we're in this thing together, this religion, right? We're in this community building together, regardless of the religion. Some of these abusers in my book changed religions, right? Once they were found out. And so, the book is talking about all these hidden things that we need to bring to the forefront, right? And I came to write in the book because my husband at the time abandoned my son and myself on a family vacation that was actually our wedding anniversary. And I came to the realization that it was all planned out. It wasn't some type of, I'm thinking, you think when someone does that, they've having some kind of breakdown or something is happening, but it was all a part of a plan. And I found out, oh, this plan had been enacted before. So, but I didn't find this out until I started talking to people, because what happens is, regardless of the community, then the women that I interviewed in my book are Muslim, Christian, and Catholic, African American, South American, and Caucasian. But once I started talking to people and saying what happened, then people are like, oh, that happened to me. It happened to my sister. It happened to my daughter. It's happening to my niece right now. And I realized, wait a minute, this is not an isolated incident, because we always feel when we're in a traumatic state, we feel that we're alone. Because we're alone in our suffering. And it's hard to talk to people about it. But once I started talking to people, I'm telling you, in the bank, in the grocery store, somehow people were coming up to me, or we would just kind of, standing in line, having a conversation, and we get there. I'm like, why is this coming to me, coming to me, coming to me? So then I ended up writing a series of articles in the Muslim Journal about abandonment in the Muslim community. And then it kind of blossomed, and people tell me you should turn this into a book. And then that's when I thought about all the women that I had spoken to, about this. And I guess I said all of that to say, when we're in a traumatic space and we need to talk about it, because other people have been there. I had a friend who I've been friends with for 15 years. I never knew that her first husband had abandoned the family. Never knew that. We talk every day. But it had been a long time ago. And so when this happened, she says, oh, yeah, that's what so-and-so. I was like, what? Because I didn't know him personally, but I knew her child from that first marriage. And so I was like, wow, if we talk about it, people will say what's happening to them. And people are living and suffering in silence. And we can't recover and we can't heal. And it's the shame of, for women, divorce, I think, is more shameful. The shame is cast on them. And abandonment, the first thing, just like if a woman is abused or sexually assaulted or robbed, where was she? Was it late? What did she have on? Was she doing this? Was she doing that? Never mind the robber. Never mind, the person who committed the sexual assault. They want to know what she was doing. So all the shame somehow keeps getting cast on the women, and so they don't speak out.
It was like she invited.
And I had just, after talking to so many people and finding out that this person had done this before, it was a pattern of behavior, not just with me. Then I was like, I realized, well, the shame is not on me. I was doing what I was supposed to do, right? And I'm not going to wear your shame.
Mm,
And so, and it was, one of my brothers-in-law who said, you're the perfect person for this to happen to. And I was like, what are you talking about? I'm just like in turmoil. Like it was a horrible time, probably the worst time of my life, right?
mm,
And so, and I was thinking, why would he say that? But he said, you're the best person for it to happen to, because he said, you're a writer, you're outspoken, and you can help a lot of people. And that's when my mind kind of started to click and change and say, you know what? I'm going to move forward, because so many people were telling me to write a book. And, I stood up before the Muslim community and read an open letter and complaint, you know,
mm,
detailing what I wanted done, how my rights as a Muslim were violated. And this is what I want done about it.
mm,
Now, some people got behind me readily, but some did not. And that's okay. But I'm not going to be quiet.
mm,
And even during the course of my divorce process, I was given some type of settlement, but it included me being quiet. Like, I'm not going to be quiet. I have earned the right to say what I want to say, because you have traumatized not only me, my son, my family, and the Muslim community. Everybody had been groomed and traumatized,
mm,
right? And so you're not going to put a settlement before me and tell me, be quiet. You're
mm.
going to pay me to be quiet,
Right.
right? And so it just I was riding along on it, because like I said, I felt like I had been kicked from a cliff, and I landed on this book, and I'm thinking, this is going to be the end of me, because my whole life was coming apart and free falling. During
Mm,
this whole time, I was taking care of my dad in a home, because I had moved to take my dad out of the nursing home because he had gotten sick during COVID, and it was non-COVID related, but it was at the time where, remember when people were at the windows talking to their loved ones?
mm,
That was us. And it was like, we can't do this. And so we had moved, and I took my dad out of the nursing home. So while I'm caring for my terminally ill father in the home, all of this happens, because I'm looking the other way. I'm looking over here. I'm working. My sister and I had opened a business. I'm working full time in the federal government. I'm caring for my dad. He's terminally ill. I did have help that would come in, like nursing care, but it's like 4 hours a day if you've ever been through that. Now you still have 20 more hours to care for this person who's sometimes bedridden. So all of my energy and focus was over here, caring for my family, my husband, my son, and working in his business and caring for my dad. And over here, this person is living a whole alternate lifestyle and plotting
mhm,
this whole situation, right? And so I thought to myself, after I spoke to so many women, like, this is happening far too often and no one's talking about it, at least not in our communities. It's like, be quiet. And people were saying that. When are you going to stop talking about it? Never. As long as people want to recover and heal and thrive and help themselves, I will not stop talking about it.
mm, mm. Ooh, y'all. Okay, I gotta sit on that a little bit. I mean, first thing that comes to my mind to you, I want to say is courage, strength, persistence, um, of course, being outspoken and just still enveloping that positive spirit. That is what we need to see and hear. So I want to thank you for not being quiet. That's number one. Thank you. Number two, what I would definitely love for you to do. I know a lot of people have heard the word narcissism. They didn't use it, and I know I've heard you a plethora of times. Of course, read your book and how people think they know what narcissism is, but a lot of times, as you put it, they may be talking about bad behavior. So, can you
Mhm.
define what narcissism is for everybody?
Okay. Um, I would like to do that, just in a descriptive way. Um, to give examples, because sometimes real life examples are easier to grasp quickly. So, let's say you're having a party, your birthday party, and your significant other comes and they're angry about something, they act up, they start an argument, they're being disruptive at the party, and all of this shenanigans and tomfoolery is falling out in the open for everyone to see.
Mhm.
That's bad behavior, poor upbringing, no home training, immaturity, right? Sometimes people do things because they're immature. They witness these things in their own families, and so they think this is appropriate behavior, right? And they're just letting it all fall out.
Right.
So now comes the narcissist.
Okay.
They show up at the party, bring you the best gift for everyone to see, to parade you around. Oh, she's so wonderful. This is the love of my life. She's doing this and that and the other and the third. They're giving giving out hugs and kisses to everyone, welcoming everyone. But every now and then the person walks by you and whispers something derogatory in your ear. You think you all that, right? You think, you deserve this? Things like that. They're whispering. That's what the narcs, they whisper in your ear, right? Like the jinn, they whisper in your ear. And then when everyone leaves, it's a whole fallout. You were trying to humiliate me by being your best self. What are you trying to do? You're trying to make me, you're trying to embarrass me? You have all these people here. Falling over you. Who do you think you are?
Mm.
Now comes the disappearance. Now they're going to disappear and take off to punish you for having the nerve to be happy, for having the nerve for people to come and celebrate you. Right? And all while treating these people great. And so when you go and complain about the abuse, because it could go into verbal abuse and physical abuse, financial abuse, and withholding things. And when you complain about the abuse, the people say, oh, but he was at the party? That's what happened to me. Wait a minute, I just saw him singing your praises. What are you talking about? And people didn't believe me. No. And so it's all a setup. The narcissist is narcissism is very intentional, hidden abuse meant to demean you, to diminish you, to make you question your place in the world. Because now you're kind of questioning things. Am I wrong? Because everyone's saying, oh, he's so great to me.
Mm-hmm.
She's so great to me. What are you talking about? You must be making this up. Because they've already groomed everyone. They're not only going to groom you, they're going to groom you, your siblings, your parents, your religious community, your neighbors, your coworkers. Now he was calling my coworker's husband to say some things that he was claiming that I did, and they were like, we don't know this to be her. Because now they're trying to plant these seeds because there's a story to tell. They've already made up the story, and now they have to make it fact. Right? So the narcissist is very well skilled at being the abuser while looking like the victim. Okay, that's their most powerful skill.
Wow.
And so then when you report the abuse, then people are going to look at you and say, wait a minute, but the only thing that will stop that is speaking out about it. Because they depend on our silence. Any abuser, whether it's mental, physical, spiritual, or financial, depends on your silence, right? If someone sexually assaults a woman, they depend on her silence so they can continue to do it, right? And then if they shame her, she's going to be silent. And they're going to say, well, you asked for it. And so they're going to be silent. And now the shame is causing them to be silent. In my book, where you read one of the ladies, her husband manipulated her and he sexually exploited her. But he forced her to this, but now he uses this against her to shame her into being quiet. What are you going to tell your parents? You're going to tell them that I did this to you? But now you have to tell them what you did. And so he shamed her into being quiet and continued to abuse her. Right? And so this is narcissism. It's not just someone having bad behavior, because all of us have had bad behavior.
Right.
Out of anger, out of fear, immaturity.
Or home training.
Not having good role models and example set, no home training, all kinds of things can cause bad behavior, but it's going to be situational. Like this happens and causes this. But the narcissist doesn't have to have something to happen. They're predatory. And so they're constantly going to have this behavior, and you will see they have it in every situation, at home, at school, at work, in a religious community. They're constantly grooming and manipulating and lying and, keeping this tornado swirling around people where everything is just confusion, and they're living an alternate life. They're like, look over here. Look over here at how, my degrees and my religion and how I look and how I dress and my money and my social status. Look over here. So you don't see over here, which most narcissists have addictions: drugs, alcohol, sex, pornography, hidden lifestyles. Don't look over there. So I'm going to keep you looking over here. So you see, narcissism is a whole way of life where bad behavior is, situational. And when the situation changes or resolves itself, the person may go back to better behavior and say, I shouldn't have done that. They'll have some remorse. The
Yeah.
next time I wouldn't do it that way. If I had the chance to do it again, or they may go and apologize to the person. Even if they don't apologize, they feel bad about it. But the narcissist would never do that. They would never apologize. They would never have remorse. They would never feel bad, because internally and they lack empathy, and their brain is completely wired in a different way. Like that frontal cortex, where you have that empathy and you have
The
control and be able to assess danger.
decision making.
Science has shown that this is not fully developed in these types of individuals. And when
Okay.
you think about narcissism, it's on a spectrum, and the high end of that spectrum is a serial killer, and the low end of that spectrum is an overindulged person. And that's how serial killers can say, I can do anything I want with you because you're nothing, you're no one.
Mm.
I can do this to you, to your family. I can stalk you, and I can do whatever, because this, at the root of serial killer, is narcissism. I'm not saying this. This is what the research shows.
So, and let me ask you, because that was the reason why too, when I had read that, just those couple of sentences in terms of a child, because when you talked about in here, it says people with high self-esteem think they're as good as others, whereas narcissists think they're better
Mhm.
others. And so when you, because obviously, so you're basically, what you're saying with that child, the person who's a narcissist, there was the foundation in their home life where typically, can you give us an explanation a little more in terms of how they got that to become a narcissist?
Right. And all narcissists are not created the same way, not created equal.
Okay.
So according to the research, there's multiple ways that people give into narcissism,
Okay.
becoming a narcissist. It
Okay.
could be that, they were raised by a narcissistic parent. They have physical abuse as a child, excuse me, abandonment and trust issues as a child,
There we go.
lack of support and caring as a child, or the overindulgence. It's going to be one or the other, right? The pendulum swinging far too much in the other direction.
Sure.
And now they have this idea that I'm better than everyone else. So therefore, I don't have to follow the rules. I don't
Mhm.
have to consider other people's feelings.
Okay.
Only my feelings matter.
Mhm.
Your feelings don't matter. Your physical self don't matter. Only my physical want and needs matter. And this is the level of like a toddler. Toddlers think this way, and that's okay for a toddler,
Right.
because they're in survival mode. They haven't learned how to communicate with the outside world. So when they're hungry, they cry. When they're wet, they cry.
Right. Me,
They lack communication skills,
right,
right?
right.
But is it appropriate? It's appropriate for them. This
Yes.
is how they can get your attention, right?
Mm.
And
Mm.
so I remember when my son was in pre-K, they taught sign language to all the kids. And it was a pre-K that had inclusion. And so they had children who had different disabilities. And then and they had the other kids that were there to create this inclusive environment. And they taught all the kids sign language. So even before my son could fully talk, he could tell me that he was hungry, that he was wet, that he was tired. He could tell me that he wanted to get out of the crib, and he didn't have language. And they said that's because the sooner they learn some type of language, the calmer they'll be, because now they can communicate. Even if they can't talk, they can communicate.
Mhm.
But the narcissist never gets beyond that level. All of their communication is about what I need, what I want, what I feel, and I'm going to get it. I'm going to get you to do it for me. I'm going to get it from you by any means necessary, because they lack that ability to empathize. Like if you're hungry and
Right.
I know you're hungry, I'm going to feed you,
Mhm.
right? But if I don't have the ability to empathize with your hunger and remember how I felt when I was hungry, I'm
Mm,
gonna say, you can just be hungry.
mm,
I'm gonna eat this steak over here. You be hungry over there. I might give you some scraps off my plate. This is how the narcissist deals with emotional support, loving. They're only going to love you as long as they're on a pedestal. And as soon as you see behind the mask, now you become enemy number one.
mm.
And then they're going to come after you like a rabid dog, right? And attack and then disappear. And that's what I learned in my research, that if you think you may or may not be in a marriage or relationship with a narcissist, the number one thing that would give you a clue that people with other bad behaviors don't do is that disappearing act. That is germane to the narcissist. And they may disappear physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, financially. They may disappear in multiple ways before they completely disappear. And people say ghosting,
Mm.
right?
Okay, right.
Only the narc does that.
Mm.
The others will stay and have bad behavior and never leave the
Yeah.
party, right?
Right. Pray they get
Right.
it together. You like, I'm just gonna have to see you at a
The
different
narc, as soon as you
side.
see them for who they are, because they're constantly aligning with you. They're constantly, whatever you love, I love. What you hate, I hate. What you want, I want. Oh yeah, you want to open a bakery? Me too. You want to open a bookstore? Me too. You want to go to Hodge? Me too. You want to open, you know,
At the new
a
party,
Sunday
right?
school? Me too. Me too. Me too. Me too.
Right. And
Now
that's
you
how
let
you
your guard down because you think you were aligned, and they're creating this idea that we're soulmates because we want the same things. They don't want anything that you want. All they want is to control you
mm, 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 mm.
and your parents and your family. And so when they finally, when the mask slips off and you complain, they're gonna say, "But no, he was always nice to me. He
Right.
was helping me. He helped me buy this car, and he helped me do this, and he helped me do that."
Mhm, mhm,
It's putting everything in place, to protect themselves from the ultimate end, because they're always going to come apart, or
mm,
they're not going to be able to stay away from that other alternate lifestyle, the drugs, the alcohol, the sex, the pornography. All of the women in my book later found out that the person was struggling with one or multiple of these issues,
mm.
and they're living this, like you're like a beard, so they have to have the family life, and so now you are the representation of their family life, so they can go live this life over here and tell everybody, "Oh no, I'm married.
Got you.
I'm married. I'm not this. I'm a
Right.
husband. I'm not this.
Got you.
I'm a Muslim. I'm not doing that. I'm a Catholic. I'm not doing that. Look over
Oh,
here. Look
ooh,
at my good life. I show up for church every Sunday. I'm at the masjid every Friday.
come
Look
on.
over here." So you're a beard for their fake life, their counterfeit life, while they live a whole different life over there. Now,
Ah,
isn't that what the serial killer does too? But that's on a high level. They always say, "I had no idea,"
right.
when they find women locked up in houses.
Yes.
He would cut my grass for me sometimes.
Oh my
What do
God.
you mean he did this? I can't believe it.
I believe
He would never do that.
it. Mm, mm, mm.
He would take care of my pets when I would travel.
Well, y'all better get this book. Y'all better get this book. And this is exactly what I'm talking about right here. This is an example of how why reading is extremely important and how reading can be so beneficial and so empowering. I mean, just the fact of you and us having this conversation about your book, about these things that a lot of folks have dealt with, but they never could quite either put a name to it. They didn't know how to explain it. They see this stuff happening and they're like, man, I'm like, I can't put my finger quite on it. You know what I'm saying? But it's something that's going on. That's why y'all need to get this book. That's
Yeah.
why we must make sure that we are reading in front of our children. We are constantly talking about the value of literacy. But for real, it's not just the talk, it's what our actions are saying,
Mhm.
being that model in our communities, normalizing reading again. Wow. So
Yeah.
with
And
that
we
being
have to talk.
said, mhm,
We have to talk to people. Had I not reached out to a previous victim, I never would have known. I didn't know anything about narcissism other than that former president. Oh, that's some crazy making. I
Right.
didn't know at this level, and had I not reached out, and then the person explained to me, "Oh, no, this happened to me too." And
Mhm.
then they start telling me my whole life as if they had been living in my house. This happened, and that happened, and this happened, and that happened, and boom, tick, 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 boom. Like, yeah. And we're completing each other's sentences as
Mm.
if because they're cookie cutter. That's the only good thing about the narc is they do the same thing all the time. So once you see it, once you know it, once you realize what it is, you can protect yourself because there's nothing creative about what they do. It's just it's like the same thing over and over. So she and I are completing each other's sentences, and but then we're also, it's just yeah. So we have to really reach out and talk to people before,
Yes.
because had I done that, right, beforehand, and don't worry about being polite.
Mhm.
Ask intrusive questions, and they're constantly teaching us to be polite as women. Don't do too much.
Mm.
Be polite. Don't be aggressive. Don't be you just team too much. No, I'm gonna ask everything, and I need you to prove. I asked all the right questions, but I didn't ask for proof. I need you to prove to me what you're saying. If you say you want to go to Hajj, how much money have you saved to go to Hajj? If you say you're getting ready to buy a house, okay, you bought a house. Can I see the deed to this house? Because guess what? Those are lies too. If you say that you're, paying off your children's education or a previous wife's whatever, I need to see proof of that. Can I call her and ask her, did you pay for her kids' education? And people say that's rude. Well, you know what's rude? Being in a marriage with a person who's living a whole nother life and wake up one day and they're gone. And that's rude, right? Don't worry about being rude,
Mhm.
right? Because you're thinking about your protection. Or as my one of my counselors, I had a counselor and a therapist to get me out of this whole situation. And I said, well, I guess I should be lucky that I didn't wake up with a pillow over my face. And she said, that's not a joke. She said,
Mm.
many people go on vacations and don't come back. You
Mm.
see it on the news. Oh, they fell off the ship. Oh, they got lost over here. Oh, we got off the ship at this port and they never got back on. She said, no, everything that happened to you was also, it could have been that. It's just that you came back. So being polite is no longer a part of the equation. Don't have to be rude, but get the information that you need.
Mhm.
Let your family get the information that they need. Do not protect people and say, "Oh, no."
Mm.
Mm-mm. And take your time because the narc can only last about 3 to 6 months. So the religious community is a perfect uh, hunting ground because not only just in the Muslim community, in the Christian community, and Catholic community, they push marriage to prevent all these other things, which is right, but not in this day and time. Because if you're pushing quick marriage to prevent some other things, you're unknowingly feeding your daughters to the wolf.
Mm.
They pray in these communities because they know they can get married quickly and they're going to be gone just as quickly as they showed up, and they're going to disappear, like in some cases, and disappear from the Muslim community and pop up in the Christian community running the same game, doing the same thing. You go from the minbar to the pulpit. I'm telling you what I know, not what I heard, what I saw.
You saw.
You're going from the minbar to the pulpit because now your mask has slipped off and you have to start all over again and reinvent yourself. The wolf in sheep's clothing, reinventing yourself. Now you show up in the pulpit. I saw it. But wait, I thought you've been Muslim for 30, 40 years. How now you're in the pulpit and starting the cycle all over again?
Well, right there, honey, like I said, y'all, this is a prime example. Number one, y'all need to get this book. Okay. This book. And even though you talk about in terms of these were women, obviously, that got this done by, because that was the focus. We know that, you have women who can actually be narcissists as well. But in this book, you focused on these men who were narcissists. All right. So just, so everybody be clear about that. No male bashing book. Okay. This is it.
No, no. And if I can, I
Please.
didn't when I started writing the book, it wasn't about narcissism at all. And the book is not strictly about narcissism, but the research led me to that. Because what I started researching was how often are women abandoned? Is it more in the Muslim or Christian or Catholic community, Black, white, Hispanic? That's what I was trying to figure out, this abandonment phenomenon. How often does it happen and why? And when I got to the why, because I like the who, what, when, where, and when I get to the why, then narcissism comes in to all the research.
Mm.
So I didn't even know that that was going to be the why.
Right.
I had an idea because of what someone told me, but
Yeah.
now I'm getting factual, scientific, documented information from psychologists and psychiatrists and therapists and people in the field. So now I said, oh, yeah, what they said to me, now I can document it that this is the why.
Got you. Well, I definitely, number one, I appreciate you again. I'm going to say it one more time. Thank you for speaking out and not being quiet. Because had you have been quiet, then we wouldn't have this phenomenal book.
Oh, thank you.
You
Thank
are
you.
very, very welcome. What I would love for you to do, since we are coming up on the end of the podcast, I would love for you to, number one, tell us what book are you currently reading? And yes, what book are you currently reading? Also, do you have plans to write another book? And then finally, where can everyone purchase the book and follow you?
Okay. Well, currently I'm reading the Quran because it's Ramadan and I'm behind.
All right, no problem.
However, I can show you.
Okay.
So right after Ramadan is over, I want to
Okay.
plug this sister here, and it's
Ooh.
called Coming to Loving Yourself. And she talks about her recovery from physical abuse, from drug abuse, and
Mm,
how now, I mean, she is a great and phenomenal speaker and supporter of women. And so it's called Coming to Loving Myself. So
like,
this is my read right after Ramadan.
okay. And
I got to get caught up.
okay, if you can, you know what? I think because you got the background, it was hard to see the cover. But if you can give us
Oh,
the author's name too.
oh, it's Coming to Loving Yourself by Sharice Johnson Moore.
Okay.
And she talks about her unbelievable journey from homelessness and physical abuse, drug abuse, and to where she is now. Just a powerful, phenomenal woman. And
Mm,
so, but her name is Sharice Johnson Moore. She's on Facebook,
okay.
and she has multiple books. So this is the one I'm going to read right after Ramadan.
Nice. And it seems like I just noticed that you gravitate to those people they have overcome some really challenging hardships. That's
Mhm.
something that I can tell, you know what I'm saying, that you gravitate to, which makes sense because that just shows the number one, the human experience, right? You know what I
Mhm.
mean? You want to be able to talk to people, not to say that you have to go through some devastating things, because that's the thing, we're so used to that in our community. We're used to devastation. We're used to seeing trauma. We're used to overcoming trauma, and we're trying to get back to a place to where we don't have to. That does not have to be normalized, and that's the thing,
Right. We
you
don't
know.
have to stay because I'm telling you, I know we have to wrap up, but I'm telling you that when I say I was thrown from a cliff, that's really what it felt like. So
Yeah,
mentally, physically, spiritually, even financially, I'm still trying to recover from this, right? And so I don't want people to think that I was like this, then
right.
this happened and I was like this. I
Yeah.
wasn't, I was taking care of myself. I had a therapist, I had a counselor. My job was coming apart. The job had to provide a counselor for me. Financially was coming apart. Then I'm burying my dad all while this is happening. And I was a hot mess and a wreck. Okay. So I don't want people to think I can't do it because look, she looks okay.
Yeah.
No, I was not okay. But you do need to not have everything happening in real time, right? I was writing the book in real time, but you have to take time to step away and take care of yourself, right? And so you can just come back and still, because I felt like if I didn't do this, that I was never going to be the same person again.
Hmm.
And now 2 years later, I'm feeling like I'm the same person again.
Got you.
But had I not stepped away to take care of myself, I would have been permanently broken and I never would have been the same again.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't want people to think, "Oh, yeah, she looks fine.
Yeah.
So she went through this and she was fine." I was not fine,
Got you.
you know?
And you
Mentally,
acknowledge
physically,
that,
spiritually, financially, I was not fine.
right?
I want people to know that you can get through it and come back and be yourself. So that's why I'm excited about reading this, coming to loving myself,
Right.
because she was not fine. And we
Yeah.
have to figure out how do people go from A to B and not fall through the cracks,
Exactly.
right? And we
Exactly.
have to show people, I want to show people how to not fall through the cracks.
Right. Right. And I'm glad that you said that, in terms of you acknowledging the fact that you weren't fine, and that's
Hot mess.
and
Yeah.
are being real and authentic, and that's what people are thirsting for in this day and age, especially in social media, especially in the age of you can just, put out here, oh yeah, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And everybody's looking, and you got folks who are looking, they're like, I'm not doing that. And then they trying to figure it out. But you right here are letting us know, please normalize the fact if you are not fine, because the healing starts there. The healing journey starts just like how they tell the people in the 12-step programs who are trying to get over addiction. I have a problem.
Oh
Say it.
yeah, I mean,
So boom.
I had physical pain. When people say, "Oh, you have mental pain," I have physical pain in my body. That's how not fine I was. No one touched me. I had physical pain in my body. I could not sleep. I could not eat. I lost weight. I had dark circles. I was not fine, you
Mm,
know? I was not fine. And then I'm coupled with, caring for my dad, and he passed like 6 weeks after. And we had to go through hospice care. So now I have to put what's happening to me in the back of my mind, care for my dad, go through hospice care, then his passing. And I was physically in pain. And
mm,
I've heard people talk about that, that I was physically in pain. And so I was not fine mentally, physically, spiritually, or financially, right? So we need to let people know it's okay to not be fine. What's not okay is us staying there. And we need to get people from not being fine
huh?
to being yourself again, or a better version of yourself. If you can't, sometimes you don't want to go back to that self, but a
Right.
better version. But we don't want to regress to not being fine again,
Mm,
not being whole again. And so that's really what we need to let people understand. It's okay not to be fine. Get help.
mhm,
Get the help. Don't let people shame you. If I broke my leg and went to the orthopedic surgeon, no one would shame me for that. Why are
right,
you shaming me for going to counseling and therapy?
mm,
Why are you shaming me for not being fine after someone has committed a purposeful sabotage of my whole being? Why are you shaming me for not being fine with that?
mm,
You wouldn't shame me if my leg was broken,
mm.
right? But I know we got to go. I love talking to you.
No, I love talking to you. And again, this is for our audience, man. I just pray that number one, the audience, I always tell them to make sure they have their notebooks and pens, pencils, whatever you choose to write with ready, because anytime I have an episode, it's going to be nuggets drop, whether I have a guest or whether, I'm, talking about a particular subject on my own, because this is about empowerment. I literally want us to get back to number one, normalizing reading in our communities, because we come from a history of literacy going back to Africa. Okay, you're talking about where books were worth more than gold. All right, having community, because you talked about that heavily in our conversation, having the communal aspect in
Mhm.
in our communities. You know what I'm saying? Having that foundation from your family, that those are the things in which is going to enrich us, and that's going to build that empowerment, which is going to help us in all areas: reading, writing, whatever it is that we're doing. I don't care what it is that we're doing, because we have that foundation, that stability, that support that's coming from the community, from your parents, grandparents, uncles, aunties, whoever. All right. So those are the things in which I hope that people are getting from this. And like I asked real quick, I wanted to know, were you starting another book? And then where can they find you? Where can they purchase the book?
Well, I think I've had that question a lot. Um, excuse me. I think if I do another book, it would be to expand on the recovery side. Because
Okay.
in the book, I do talk about those 9 red flags and 8 steps to recovery, but I would like to expand on that. And I want the book to be short enough to be readable,
Yes.
in a week or maybe 2 weeks, depending upon your speed,
Right.
and be whole. But I didn't want it to be too much, because people are busy. So I think I would like to expand on the recovery and flesh that out. Because I talk about mental, physical, spiritual, financial, and legal recovery. I have legal documents in the book that can be helpful, and so I want to expand on that piece.
Yeah.
If people want to purchase a copy, you can get it at online at Barnes and Noble, Amazon, Google Play, iTunes, and Kindle. And leave me a review. And
Yes.
if people want to purchase a signed copy, they can inbox me on Facebook, or send me an email at kaleemaamin@gmail.com. And then for signed copies, they would pay me directly and I will mail it out, sign it, excuse me, and mail it out.
Nice, nice. Well, hey, you guys, and what I always do anyway, I put the information in the description box. So, because I know that, people are listening or whatever in your cars, wherever, just make sure that you go and subscribe to my YouTube channel, Reading is Freedom, because this episode will be uploaded on there. And so you guys can make sure you look in the description box, and I will have where you can follow her, how you can purchase her book. And hey, listen, purchase multiple copies. All right. Get the books out. Okay. She knows ABC Reads, the organization that I started, we've given out copies. I just gave a copy.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Because this is about empowerment for real. Well, I want to again, thank you. Thank you so much, Kaleema.
Thank you for the invite.
Yes, this was phenomenal. I hope that you enjoyed this. I hope that this was a great experience for you.
Most definitely. I feel like we're just sitting in your living room chatting, so it's been great.
I love it. Well, again, everybody, this has been another episode of Real Reading Talk, and I am your most gracious host, Ms. Sasha. And with Real Reading Talk, we discuss the real systemic issues that are the very core, the very foundation, as to why there are low levels of literacy in the Black community and the ways in which we can combat these issues together. I thank you all for listening. And remember to please keep reading for at least 30 minutes a day. And yes, reading is freedom. Peace.
Peace. Assalamu alaikum.
I mean, come on, y'all. Y'all know what it is, right? That conversation with Sister Kaleema was just spectacular. I mean, she brought it. Okay? She absolutely brought it. And, the takeaways that I hope that you all gained, the community aspect, the relationships with your family, making sure that we are intentional about stamping out these generational curses that plague our Black community. All right, making sure that we quit normalizing trauma. And so I hope that you all got those nuggets and many more. She gave solutions. Again, Real Reading Talk is a solution-oriented podcast. When I have guests on, or even when I'm talking talking to you all without a guest, I'm always going to talk about the solutions. And so I hope that you all got that from the podcast. Enjoy the conversation, and just remember to just keep sharing this information. All right, please keep doing that, y'all. Real quick housekeeping. Of course, I'm a pre-K through fourth grade reading tutor. And my reading tutoring business is ABC Learn Tutoring. So if your child is struggling with any type of comprehension, struggling with phonemic awareness, phonics, writing basic sentences, grammar, all of these different things, one or all, please be sure to reach out to me by going to my website, abclearntutoring.com, and clicking on that free reading assessment. Also, I'm the founder and executive director of ABC Read. Our mission is to develop and nurture a culture of literacy in Black and underserved communities. We've given away over 6,000 books. We also have dynamic, explosive, intergenerational, enriching, empowering reading events. And this is something that we do so that we can normalize reading, normalize having healthy spaces, safe spaces, community-oriented places for our people to go so they can enjoy, so they can also take home with them goodies like books. All right, so make sure that you go to abcread.org and you can see the work that we've done. And we really do need donations. So any donation that you give, we are truly appreciative of. Also, I have a YouTube channel, Reading is Freedom. Make sure you subscribe to that as well. This podcast episode will be uploaded to there as well, inshallah, God willing. And make sure that you also check out my website, Reading is Freedom. I started Reading is Freedom, the brand. It's in the process again in the trademark pending phase. So God willing, inshallah, that it will get approved, and I will just be so elated because that phrase, reading is freedom, is literally something that we have to look at reading as. It's a way for us to be liberated, okay? Because the destination is liberation, right? The destination is for us to be self-determined, to be empowered, to be inspired, to normalize healthy behaviors and interactions in our families within ourselves, okay? So please check out the website. You can grab a shirt like that with that design. I have other designs as well. And so there you have it. I'm going to also share with you all the book that I've been reading. The book that I've been reading is called The Coming. I want to show you guys that book, all right? For those of you able to watch this episode on YouTube, The Coming, all right? Written by Daniel Black, okay? And so this book is a novel that he has written, which talks about, he gives a view of what our ancestors who were enslaved and who were brought through the Middle Passage, and how, what things that they would have talked about, conversations, the ways in which they described how they were treated in the most horrific way. He gave voice to our ancestors in this novel. It's very, it's not a novel that I would say that you're going to just read through and just be like, oh, wow, that you're going to literally be reflective. You are going to, you may even cry, okay? Because the way he gives the voice to our different African ancestors and the things that they would have said to one another, and the things that they dealt with during that horrific time, it's just, it was almost, I hate to say it like that, but in a visual sense, like we were there, like you can actually see it. The way his descriptive writing, the way he writes is so vivid. It makes you visualize, literally, you're able to see like, okay, oh my God, man. So with that being said, I hope you all check that book out. And I'm going to leave you all with this quote by Toni Morrison, which is, if there's a book that you want to read, but it hasn't been written yet, then you must write it. All right, just like our sister Kaleema Overton Ameen, she got empowered. She said, I'm not just going to stay stuck in this horrific situation that this person had put her through. After she got herself together, she went into writing about this experience because she wanted to see our communities, in particular our women, because the women, we are the ones, we are the mothers, right? We are the first educators, okay? So we have to be well, okay? And so she wants to make sure that we are in a healthy mind state so that we can have better, thriving communities. I'm done. I hope you all enjoyed that episode of Real Reading Talk. Again, my name is Miss Sation. Please make sure that you continue to read for at least 30 minutes a day. And remember, reading is freedom. Peace.